A man can spend years believing women only notice confidence, status, the way he talks, the car he drives, the money he makes, and still completely miss the thing they quietly study first: his face. Not whether he looks like a model, that's the part men get wrong. I'm talking about the tiny things your face reveals before you even open your mouth. Your skin when you're exhausted but pretending you're fine. Your eyes when you've stopped expecting good things from people. Your hair when you've unconsciously stopped caring about yourself in subtle ways you don't even notice anymore. Women notice that. Deeply, painfully deeply. And if you've ever had the feeling that someone looked at you for 2 seconds and somehow understood too much about you, this conversation is probably going to hit harder than you expect. So before we go further, if this already feels uncomfortably personal, subscribe. Not for numbers, just because these conversations are rare now. Most people talk about attraction like it's a game. I'd rather talk about the parts nobody admits out loud. Because here's what I've learned after years of listening to people talk about love, desire, loneliness, betrayal, insecurity. Women often react emotionally to a man's face long before they decide whether they're attracted to him. And no, not in the shallow way social media keeps teaching you. A woman can look at 2 men with the exact same features and feel completely different around them. Because the human face leaks emotional information constantly, especially male faces. See, men are taught to hide emotion verbally, so emotion escapes somewhere else, usually through the eyes. The tension around the mouth, the skin, the posture of the face itself. That's why some men walk into a room and women keep glancing at them without fully understanding why. It isn't perfection, it's emotional coherence. A face that says, I sleep well, I respect myself, I'm carrying pain, but it didn't rot me. I still feel alive. That affects people more than symmetry ever will. And you know what's heartbreaking? A lot of men slowly lose that aliveness without realizing it. Not because they're weak, because life becomes mechanical. Wake up, work, scroll, numb yourself, repeat. Then one day they look in the mirror and something feels off. Not uglier, just dimmer. The eyes especially. Women notice eyes first more often than men realize. Not color, not shape, presence. A man with tired eyes creates a very specific emotional reaction. Women can sense when a man is mentally elsewhere, emotionally disconnected, quietly defeated, even if he's smiling, especially if he's smiling. And I need you to understand something difficult. People are not responding only to your appearance. They're responding to the emotional atmosphere your appearance creates. That's why one man with messy hair feels magnetic, while another feels neglected. One man's wrinkles feel grounding, another's feel heavy. One man's silence feels calm, another's feels emotionally unavailable. Women read faces emotionally before logically, almost instinctively, and sometimes your face is telling a story about you that your mouth hasn't caught up to yet. That's the part nobody tells men. Your face changes when you stop feeling connected to your own life, not dramatically, quietly. The skin dulls, the eyes flatten, the expressions become delayed. You start looking like someone waiting instead of living. And the terrifying thing is, most men don't notice it happening until someone treats them differently. Or worse, until nobody notices them at all. There's a moment some men experience that they never talk about out loud. It usually happens in silence. Maybe you catch your reflection in a store window after work. Maybe it's late at night in the bathroom mirror. Maybe someone took a photo of you and your first reaction wasn't, I look bad. It was, is that really what I look like now? Not because you aged, not because your face became unattractive, because something in your expression feels unfamiliar, like life has been taking small pieces from you without permission. And women pick up on that far more than men think they do. I've seen men obsess over jawlines while completely ignoring exhaustion, obsess over muscles while their eyes look emotionally starved, obsess over looks maxing while their face quietly communicates stress, resentment, loneliness, and self-abandonment. And women feel that contradiction instantly. Because attraction is emotional pattern recognition. A woman looks at a man's face and unconsciously asks herself questions she would never say aloud. Does he take care of himself, or has he given up in subtle ways? Does his face soften when he listens, or stay emotionally guarded? Do his eyes look curious about life, or tired of it? Is there warmth in him, or only performance? You'd be shocked how often women describe attractive men using emotional language instead of physical language. He looks peaceful. He has kind eyes. He looks grounded. He looks like he actually notices people. That last one matters more than you think. Because a lot of men today are physically present and psychologically absent. And it shows on the face. The constant overstimulation, the chronic stress, the emotional suppression, the isolation, the scrolling, the lack of real rest. It changes a man's eyes first. Not permanently, but noticeably. You can actually see when someone hasn't felt emotionally engaged with life in a long time. Their gaze stops landing fully. They look through moments instead of inside them. And women are incredibly sensitive to eye contact that feels emotionally empty. Not intense, not dominant, empty. There's a difference. Some men think attraction comes from appearing detached, mysterious, unbothered. But emotional deadness is not mystery. Women don't lean toward men who feel absent. They lean toward men who feel awake. That's why sometimes a man becomes more attractive after hardship, and another man becomes harder to connect with. Pain itself isn't what changes attraction. It's whether the pain deepened him or disconnected him from himself. You can see it in the face, especially around the eyes. A man who's suffered but stayed emotionally alive often has this strange gravity to him. Women feel safe looking at him because his face communicates experience without bitterness. But when a man starts emotionally withdrawing from life, women feel distance even before conversation begins. And I think that's the part men deserve more honesty about. Your face is not just genetics, it's accumulated emotion. Your sleep, your stress, your habits, your inner dialogue, your level of self-respect, your emotional state over time. All of it leaves fingerprints. That's why sometimes the most attractive thing about a man is difficult to photograph. It's animation, the way his eyes respond, the way his face changes when he's genuinely interested, the subtle calm in someone who isn't performing every second. Women notice that more than men realize. Not because women are magical mind readers, because humans are built to detect emotional safety and emotional truth through faces. And when a man stops caring for himself internally, his face eventually tells on him. I want to tell you something that might sting a little. Some men are trying so hard to become attractive that they accidentally erase the very thing women would have been drawn to in the first place, their humanity. You can see it happening everywhere now. The hyper-controlled expressions, the rehearsed confidence, the calculated body language, the obsession with appearing high value, the constant monitoring of how they're perceived. And underneath all of it, fear. Fear of not being enough, fear of being ignored, fear of being ordinary, fear that if they stop performing for 1 second, nobody will choose them. Women can feel that tension in a man's face almost immediately, not consciously maybe, but emotionally, because the male face changes when it's trying too hard to be approved of. The eyes become watchful instead of present. The smile becomes strategic instead of warm. Even stillness starts looking unnatural. And ironically, that's often when attraction disappears. Not because he's unattractive, because he no longer feels emotionally real. You know what women rarely admit out loud? A man becomes magnetic when his face reflects comfort inside his own existence. Not arrogance, not ego, not fake confidence. Comfort. There's something deeply calming about a man who doesn't seem at war with himself. A man whose face isn't constantly asking, "Am I enough right now? Did I say the right thing? Does she like me? How do I appear?" Women feel relief around men like that. And relief is incredibly underrated in attraction, especially now, because most people are exhausted from performance. That's why sometimes a man with imperfect features becomes unforgettable. His face feels emotionally breathable. There's no manipulation in it, no desperation, no hidden hunger for validation, just presence. and presence changes everything. I remember once hearing a woman describe a man she couldn't stop thinking about. She didn't mention his height, didn't mention money, didn't mention status. She said, "When he looked at me, I felt like he was actually there." That stayed with me for years, because so many men are physically visible, but emotionally unreachable. And women feel lonely around emotionally unreachable men, even during conversation. Especially during conversation. You can fake charm for a few minutes, you can fake confidence temporarily, but your eyes eventually reveal your relationship with yourself. That's why men who secretly hate themselves often struggle in ways they can't explain, even when they do everything right. Their face carries tension, defensiveness, emotional fatigue, sometimes quiet anger, and women instinctively brace against it. Not because those men are bad people, because unresolved self-rejection changes the emotional texture of a face. A man who feels deeply disconnected from himself often develops this subtle hardness, like he's expecting disappointment before life even happens, and women notice that immediately. The tragic part? Many men think they need better looks when what they actually need is reconnection. Real sleep, real peace, real purpose, real friendships, real emotional honesty. A life that doesn't quietly drain them. Because your face responds to the life you're living. People can tell when a man laughs often. They can tell when he lives in chronic stress. They can tell when he hasn't felt desired in years. They can tell when he's carrying grief he never processed. The body always speaks. The face speaks loudest of all. And women? Women are listening to things your mouth never says. There's something men don't always connect the dots on. A woman isn't just reacting to how you look in a still moment. She's reacting to how your face behaves over time, across seconds, across micro movements, across the way your expression changes when you're not trying to control it. That's where attraction either deepens or quietly fades. Because the face is not a mask. It's a living feedback system, and women read it like a language they never had to learn. Let me explain it in a way that might land differently. Have you ever been around someone and felt calm without them doing anything special? No jokes, no flirting, no performance. Just calm. Their presence doesn't demand anything from you. Their face doesn't feel tense or defensive or performative. It feels open enough that you relax without realizing why. Now flip that. Have you ever been around someone and felt slightly on edge, even if they were being nice? That subtle tension you couldn't explain. That's not random. That's emotional signaling. And it shows up on the face more than anywhere else. Women are extremely sensitive to this, because historically, emotionally, and socially, their safety depended on reading microsignals accurately. So they don't just see your face, they interpret your nervous system through your face. And here's where things get uncomfortable for a lot of men. You cannot fully hide internal conflict. You can manage words, you can manage posture, you can manage tone, but your face eventually relaxes into what you actually feel most of the time. That's why a man who is internally chaotic starts to look tight without realizing it. Jaw slightly clenched, eyes slightly narrowed, forehead subtly tense, expression resting closer to seriousness than ease, even when nothing is happening. And women notice that shift faster than men do. But here's the part that rarely gets discussed honestly. This isn't about being pretty, it's about emotional readability. Women are drawn to faces that feel emotionally readable in a safe way. Not predictable, not boring. Readable. There's a difference. A readable face says, "I know where I am with you. I'm not being manipulated. You're emotionally consistent." That creates trust at a very primal level. And trust is one of the strongest components of attraction, stronger than people admit. Now think about how many men unknowingly build the opposite. They try to appear unaffected. They suppress emotion. They hide vulnerability. They force detachment. They adopt a "nothing bothers me" expression. But the face doesn't become peaceful. It becomes closed. And closed reads as distance. Not mystery, distance. And distance makes people lean back emotionally, even if they can't explain why. This is where many men get stuck in confusing patterns. They think, "I look fine, so why don't I feel noticed?" But the real question is, what is my face communicating when I stop controlling it? Because women are not responding to your effort, they are responding to your baseline. Your default emotional state when you're not performing. And that baseline shows up in your face within seconds of interaction. Not hours, seconds. That's why sometimes a man walks into a room and doesn't have to say a word, yet still shifts the emotional tone slightly. Not because of dominance, because of emotional presence, or the absence of it. And if I'm being completely honest with you, most men underestimate how visible their internal life actually is. The stress they don't talk about, the loneliness they normalize, the resentment they bury, the exhaustion they push through, the hope they stopped feeding. All of it leaves traces, and women read those traces as emotional signals long before they become conscious thoughts. So when a woman looks at your face longer than expected, it's not always about beauty. Sometimes it's because she's trying to understand what she's feeling in response to you. And that feeling is usually shaped by something deeper than appearance. It's shaped by the emotional atmosphere your face carries into the room before you even speak. There's a part of this conversation most men don't expect. Because up until now, it might sound like I'm saying, fix your face, or look better, or be more attractive. But that's not what's actually happening here. It's more unsettling than that. Because your face isn't separate from your life. It's the receipt. And women read it like one. Let that sit for a second. A receipt of how you've been living, emotionally, mentally, privately, when nobody is watching. Not in a judgmental way, in a perceptive way. And this is where things get psychologically interesting. A man can improve his appearance externally without changing anything internally, and still feel invisible in ways he can't explain. Because the face doesn't just reflect effort, it reflects state. Your state of mind, your state of nervous system, your state of emotional containment. And over time, that becomes visible. Not dramatically, subtly, almost unfairly subtly. You might notice it first in photos where you swear, that doesn't look like me. But it is you, just unfiltered, not curated, not controlled, not masked by your internal intention, just observed. And women, in real time, are constantly observing that unfiltered version of you. Not to judge, but to understand. Because attraction, especially for women, is rarely a single decision. It's a slow, emotional accumulation, a feeling building in the background. I feel relaxed around him. I feel a little tense around him. I feel seen around him. I feel like I have to guess where I stand. And your face contributes to all of that more than most men realize, especially the eyes. Because the eyes don't just show emotion, they show relationship with emotion. A man who has learned to sit with himself tends to have eyes that feel settled, not intense, not overly confident, not trying to prove anything, just settled. And that creates a strange kind of emotional safety. But a man who is constantly fighting himself internally develops a different pattern. His eyes look like they're scanning for something: approval, threat, rejection, escape, even in calm situations. And women feel that scanning energy. It creates subtle emotional uncertainty, and uncertainty reduces ease. And ease is where attraction grows naturally. That's the part many people miss. Attraction doesn't always die because of something dramatic. Sometimes it just loses ease. A conversation that feels slightly tighter than it should. A smile that doesn't fully land. A moment of silence that feels heavier than neutral. All of that gets stored emotionally, and eventually it becomes a story the woman's mind tells without words. I don't feel fully relaxed here. And your face is part of that story. Not the whole story, but a constant contributor. That's why some men, after working on themselves internally, not externally, notice something strange happening. People start treating them differently before anything about their appearance officially changes. Because their emotional baseline shifted. Their face stopped carrying constant tension. Their eyes stopped overworking. Their expressions stopped defending something invisible. And suddenly, interactions feel lighter. Not because they became a different person, but because they stopped broadcasting internal conflict at full volume. And I want to be careful here because this isn't about perfection. It's not about becoming endlessly calm or emotionally flat. It's about integration. A man whose inner world and outer expression aren't constantly at war with each other. That's what women respond to over time. Not perfection, coherence. And when that coherence starts to show on your face, people don't always know what changed. They just feel it. There's a quiet misunderstanding I need to correct before we end this. Because if you take everything we've talked about and turn it into pressure, you'll miss the point completely. Your face is not a project. It's not something to optimize until women react a certain way. And if you start watching yourself too closely, trying to fix every expression, you'll actually move further away from what creates natural attraction in the first place. I've seen that happen. A man becomes self-aware in a way that turns into self-monitoring. He stops being in his life and starts evaluating himself in it. And the face changes again. But not in the direction he wanted. It becomes controlled, measured, careful. And careful is not the same as alive. Let me say that again in a different way. Women are not looking for a man who has perfected his face. They're responding to a man whose inner life is no longer spilling into constant tension. There's a difference, a very important one. Because when a man starts to genuinely take care of himself, not perform care, not mimic it, but actually live differently, his face follows in a way that can't be faked. Sleep changes it. Less resentment changes it. Better emotional boundaries change it. Real connection changes it. Even small daily honesty with yourself changes it. Slowly, the face stops holding so much. And when a face stops holding so much, it starts to look more open. Not younger, not perfect, not engineered. Open. And openness is something people feel before they understand it. You might notice it in yourself first in strange moments. You're not trying to impress anyone. You're not analyzing your expression. You're just present. And someone looks at you longer than expected, not because you changed your features, but because you stopped interrupting yourself internally. That's what a lot of attraction conversations miss. It's not about becoming someone else. It's about stopping the internal noise that leaks into everything you are. Your skin, your eyes, your expressions, your silence, your stillness. All of it becomes softer when you're not constantly resisting your own experience of life. And I want to end this on something honest. There will always be people who are more conventionally attractive than you. That was never the point. But there are men who feel emotionally safe to be around, and men who feel emotionally uncertain to be around. And over time, that difference becomes more important than most surface-level traits. Because women don't just remember faces. They remember how they felt while looking at them. So if there's anything worth taking from this, it's not to chase a better face. It's to notice the life behind it. Because when the life changes, the face doesn't have to be forced into anything. It simply starts to tell a different story. And people feel that story long before they understand it.